Lightning like Steve McQueen. I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better push yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Morning Show, the top morning show in transportation, coming to you live every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines and provide some actual insight into what all of this bullshit means out there that we see in articles and everything else. As you can see, I am not in studio this week. I am actually in Minnesota. I'm going to be doing some on-site stuff for the Minnesota Trucking Association tomorrow night. I'm going to be doing a 1-hour live show at about like 7:30 Central Time. And again, we're just going to be talking with people who are active in the industry about some stuff. And then we'll be live a Wednesday morning, a little bit earlier to accommodate the flow of the conference and everything out there. But I'm back on my old stomping grounds out here for a few days. And yeah, as always, we're mobile. We're gonna come to you guys live no matter where we are, because that's what we do every single day. I don't have my normal neon sign behind me, but I got to give a shout out to my friends over at V-Hub. You guys are the ones who make this show possible every single time we go live out there. The access to trailers, assets, we need that. Whether you're a shipper, a broker, or a carrier alike, you need access to those trailers. I mean, and in no market should you ever have to shut down because your trailer's down as a truck driver. Now, like which you can get on their vhubapp.com, is you get access to those trailers. And the best part about it, you guys, is you guys get paid to move these trailers around. So right now, with what we have in on the app and everything, and again, I'm going to share my screen here for you guys. Give me a second, because what we got here is our trailers over in Paragould, Arkansas. And what it is, you know, as you see, you get paid $15.50 to move it up to just outside of Tacoma in Orting, Washington. And then they also have them over in Glade Spring, Virginia, going up to Orting, Washington again. And as you can see, $15.50 to reposition that trailer. And then our friend Ron Burgundy has some down in San Diego, going down to Houston, Texas. And again, you get paid $600 to do that, you guys. And then further, you know, as again, hit them up, you guys, vhubapp.com. They are my man Xavier Campos and my friend Stacy Steen. They'll be in the audience here in a little bit. And again, hit them up. Just let them know that the Freight Coach sent you. Northern, yeah, you're right, Lauren Began, Northern Midwest. That's what's up. Good morning, Sonny Sharma. He's back in Cali. Finally, man, your whole U.S. road trip is back in. I got a very special guest for you guys today. I'm going to bring him up on the show right now. He is my good friend from DAT, Mr. Ken Adamo, back from sunny Florida. Of course, he's rocking his Ohio State shirt because he holds true to who he is. What's up, brother?
Not a whole heck of a lot. How about you?
Man, you know, life on the road and getting back out. And dude, it's so weird coming back home now, you know, like, because it's living in the desert in Phoenix like I do, and then coming back and actually seeing vegetation again.
Yeah, it's nice to travel for leisure once in a while. I'm on the road a lot for work, and it was nice. You know, a lot of the tensions at the airport and, you know, aren't quite as high when you're traveling to go to the beach for a week.
No, I guess, yeah, because you just don't care as much. Like
No, my wife got all spun up with this and that at the airport. I'm like, look, I've seen fist fights. I've seen pretty much everything you could possibly see. And this is nothing.
Yesterday was probably the most seamless boarding process I've ever experienced on a flight. Like, there was no anybody walking around aimlessly saying, "Where's my seat?" You know, and then it's like, "Oh, you mean the assigned one on your boarding pass?" None of that happened, fortunately.
Oh man, we flew Southwest because you get the 2 bags and the kids board and all that stuff, and I just hate it. I can never do that. The people that fly Southwest for work are crazy, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's one of those things that, you know, the beauty of Phoenix is that we got a hub for American and Southwest right there. So, you know, we don't have to compete with that or anything like that. So, dude, what's up in the market right now from your guys' perspective? What are you guys seeing out there? I mean, I follow you guys because you guys go live every single Tuesday. It's 10 a.m. Eastern time when you guys do your weekly market report. I tune into that every single Tuesday because, again, it's like the volume of information that you guys are bringing to the table is the most effective data that I see out there on a weekly basis. And I mean, I take it, I break it down, and I bring it to a lot of my clients and everything else on how we read and really assess what the next 4 to 8 to 10 weeks are going to look like in the market.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate it. Love having you in the audience. I'll say that, I mean, I think on the dry van and reefer side, it's kind of a strong yellow right
Yeah.
now. I think flatbed's starting to worry me a tad bit at the national level, which is no surprise, right? With higher interest rates and some of the cooling off of construction, new home construction and whatnot. So I would kind of grade the overall market. I don't know, maybe give it a B at the moment. Certainly not. I mean, if you're a large carrier, certainly not feeling any recessionary pressures, not feeling any bloodbaths. We're not seeing imports go off a cliff. Pretty much a record Q2 earnings season for large brokers and carriers. I don't know if
Yeah.
you watched the earnings, but
I did.
it was essentially, I was talking to Jason Miller up at Michigan State, and I know that he's a Buckeye, so we have some common ground. And he said basically it's the equivalent of running a 4-minute mile in all of these earnings calls, right? So, and what's been interesting to me is that they're all projecting strength into H2, which is surprising to me. I mean, they don't need to go on record and say that kind of stuff, but their willingness to do so pretty much across the board has been, I think, uplifting.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, I think like I don't like, regardless of what anybody says, I don't think every freight market, like any freight market is like truly healthy, because in my opinion, somebody's always losing in a freight market. So like, we can't look at it from all same sides of the coin. But I also think like looking at it from an overall perspective, when we're looking at import volumes that are out there, you're looking at overall truckload volumes, it's still holding very, very steady, which is surprising. And well, it's pleasantly surprising. I'll call it that.
Yeah, I don't think I'd like to think we're not overly surprised. I mean, the people that are kind of really close to the data and have been doing this for a while, right, I don't think they're overly surprised. I mean, I think it was, frankly, not to get too salty on a Monday morning, it was kind of like the laughing stock of the industry when these like recession claims and bloodbath claims were going around. So I think most people expected a pretty standard market cycle. I think spot rates did come down probably a bit more than people expected. But look, if you're a shipper, you're going, what cost decreases?
Yeah.
I'm paying more because I have to pay the fuel surcharge.
Yep.
I'm paying more than I ever have for freight. Now they're starting to see some relief on the contract side as some typical bid cycles. And one of the side effects of COVID has been shorter contract lengths, which means the rebid cycle will happen more expeditiously, which means we probably see contract rates come down into the tail half of the year. But contract rates almost never come down nationwide, even remotely to the extent spot rates will. You won't see a 30. I mean, we're all in for a pretty wild ride if you see like a 20-30% contraction in contract prices.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. And I think like, to me, it's what we're seeing, like I was talking about this last week extensively, is it's almost like a normalization of a normal freight market. Like when you look at the data, when you look at the seasonality of things, it's starting to normalize out there. But again, you're right. Like, I think that I'm like the amount of contracted freight that is still running out there. And again, like like the spot market is always going to be the most volatile no matter what. And I think that, like with like you brought up the recessionary, the bloodbath and everything else. And of course, now you can spin it in, we're not saying it's, it wasn't for everybody. It was just for this sector. And of course, it's trying to spin it in any way possible. But again, people are still making it work no matter what, because I think like the last like session that you found ourselves in was, back in 08, 09, when rates were worse and fuel was high and everything else. Like, we've experienced this before, but again, it's just like, it's back to finding as much consistency as you possibly can. And it's like removing your reliance off of one way of finding freight, because like contract is always going to be higher, and you're going to find more shippers that are more willing to work with you and lock you in long-term with a contracted approach than as opposed to the typical spot market.
Yeah, I mean, very rarely will you find in freight a one side. That's when people start talking in absolutes in the freight market, you should get very, very concerned.
Correct.
Other than like Florida always being cheaper to go. I don't even know if that's true. I'm sure someone can show me a freight bill where they paid more to come out than they went to go in, right? Yeah. So I'm hesitant in many absolutes. And yeah, I mean, people are still getting beat up on the intermodal side from a service perspective. We've seen record backlogs on the East Coast due to some skittishness about West Coast ports. So there's always a storm brewing, right? You're never more than a hurricane or a work stoppage away from throwing the whole thing into a tailspin. So It's been quiet, thankfully, on those fronts, especially the tropical front so far this summer.
No, absolutely, man. And that like to me, that's the hardest part about, like, I understand like the importance of a national average, but that's the hardest part about breaking that down on a customer basis, because like the national average means nothing to people who only ship in certain regions and everything else and different freight types. Like there's so much that goes out there, because again, it's like if you look at the national average of spot rates right now, like as a whole, I know that there's spot loads that are moving out there for still $4 or $5 a mile. Like it's
Yeah.
tough to put a one size fits all approach to any freight market, any freight cycle that you ever find yourself in. Like there are higher paying lanes that are out there. It's just not as easy as it was for, the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, kind of the hard truth about it is that it's pretty much always, with rare exception, it's usually a recession for people making bad business decisions, right? So if you were that last owner operator with bad credit and maybe a poor driving history to go lease a 3-year-old, buy a 3-year-old truck for $100 and some $1,000, you're probably already out of business, right?
Yeah.
But the disciplined carriers, the disciplined brokers are finding, really, I think they're having success in this environment. It's not just the publicly traded companies that are doing well. And again, I'm not tone deaf. I understand that if you're not on a fuel recapture program as a small fleet owner or an owner operator, you're not making nearly as much money as you did 6 months ago. But that's not to mean that it's impossible to make money, and that's not to mean that you can't be successful.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you, man. I think that right now is, in my opinion, this is the greatest freight market to be working in, because I think like with service levels being as low as what they were for the last couple of years, that everybody's door open now, that like there's a little bit of stabilization that you see out there, is everybody's doors open for business right now, because it's like, you got to think these people who are charging astronomical prices as a broker or a carrier and then dropping on service, like again, there's no real, in my opinion, there's no better time to be in this industry than right now when it comes from a new customer acquisition phase, because everybody's doors are open, because they've all seen how things have played out. They've all identified who was the real partner for themselves over these last couple of years and who was just out there playing the market. And that is where you're always going to find yourself in trouble as a broker or a carrier alike, is your service is everything. Because again, like I rate per mile is always going to be a portion like that, like, yes, price is a very real thing, but your rate means nothing if you don't execute, and that's where the validity behind the prices that you charge to your shippers always come through the form of execution. And that's what I talk about frequently, is it's like in sales, for example, the cold calling, the selling's the easy part. It's the execution of when they actually send you over the first load. That's when the real work starts, because that's when everything as a broker, especially, everything's out of your control. Like, is the truck going to hit traffic, or is there going to be a mechanical issue or something like that? There's only so much we can do in those situations. And it's like, I think that what you saw last year were people out there, because again, it's like, if you take Houston to LA, for example, one customer's paying, say, $7,000 on it. A carrier accepts that load, or a broker takes that load, and then another carrier or a customer posts that exact same load, and 30 minutes later for $8,000. What are they going to do? They're going to jump off, and they're going to get the higher paying load, because that's just how the free market operates. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a diverse. I think we like to pretend, it's convenient, and it almost needs to be assumed to underpin some of our thinking around market dynamics that freight is commoditized, but it's just not the case, right? There's a 53-foot dry van, even on, like you mentioned, on a single lane for the same day. 2 identical shipments we've all seen go for drastically different rates. I mean, how many times has your buddy down the hall been negotiating against you unknowingly with the same carrier to move freight? You know what I mean? Like these. So it's with that level of human interaction. And when so much of the decision making comes down to 2 people or even 3 people agreeing to a price in a service level, it's hard to fully accept that it's a commodity. And we see that more on the flatbed side, where it's much more one-off negotiated, more projects, and a bunch of different equipment types to have to worry about.
No, I get it, man. Absolutely. I know that the national average for fuel, you know, this is why I love having Ken on here, because we never really stay on the show notes that we send over, because there's just so much to talk about. But the national average for fuel is still, you know, over $5 a gallon right now, you guys, and it's the EIA.gov will release the updated fuel report later on today. So on tomorrow's show, we'll have that updated information. Riley Dietrich, good morning. Otto, good morning. Thanks for joining me here. Rick Wooten, good morning. Pat Green, Xavier, and then Jared Gallus says we appreciate your perspective there, Ken. So yeah, let's break down some articles. The first one is from the JOC, and this came out last Thursday, but it was their Intermodal Savings Index, and that how truck rates have poached rail freight in Q2. Spot intermodal rates have been less competitive than at any point in the last 2 years at the end of Q2, at just above 110, and then a minimal benchmark for intermodal shippers, because basically it equates to a discount ranging from $125 to $250 door to door. The JOC spot ISI averaged 110.9 during the quarter, down from 120.6. The JOC index measures how much money a shipper should save on 117 modularly competitive U.S. lanes out there. And then, you know, but it also goes in that the intermodal rates continue to rise, and that spot intermodal rates are getting unattractive. And I think that that's just a lot of it to me. It's just like that's another part of the freight cycle as well, is when it shifts modes, for example, you know, because it's like that when we're out here talking about like strict transit times, you're never going to throw anything on the rail. But it's like, if you have open on both ends of it, like, you're never going to compete with rail on an OTR standpoint as a whole, you know, because that's always going to be historically cheaper. But you're also starting to see that modes change, prices change out there, and it will naturally shift where a customer is going to take the OTR rate that might be $200 more, but they know it's more of a guaranteed on when it's going to actually show up. It's going to reduce the transportation cycle of the shipment and all. And again, it's like you're starting to see that because customers aren't ignorant. And that I just want to think a lot of sales reps out there, Ken, especially at the desk level, like fail to realize is that customers have access to this data. They know what they're doing up there. And again, it's just like delivering that information. And it's like that's why you need to be there in your customers' ears every waking moment as a sales rep, is because of this. When this starts to shift, when those customers who are historically intermodal, they're going to start looking for alternative methods to shipping in any market. And then they're going to be able to be out there to get, you know, and kind of swoop up this, because truckload is always like, that's why I love truckload so much overall as a whole, is because as unpredictable it is, it's, I don't know if this is going to make any sense, but in my mind it does. And anybody who's been a broker or a carrier, truckload is predictably unpredictable with that regard on how volumes can spike up to what we were saying earlier. Is two truckloads on the exact same lane, exact same commodity, can run for 18 to 20% different in price.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't help. I don't know that people feel that much sympathy for the rails at the moment, because, or the IMCs, because service has been rather lacking throughout most of COVID. Yeah, so it's you know, Ari, you know, calls out that typical gap, that savings that you would need to make it worthwhile, and I think that's probably with a lot of shippers, if you talk to them right now, maybe even a little bit wider, because it's been poor service, it's been surprise upcharges. So I think, look, this is the balance, right? You alluded to it, but as intermodal becomes less competitive against truckload, it actually becomes a volume driver for the truckload side, which eventually will drive prices up, which will make rail more competitive, right? So I mean, it's just this balance that happens. Frankly, I'm surprised this is happening now. I think the rapidity with which spot rates fell hastened this a bit. I wouldn't have expected this until maybe later in the year, once the glut of inventory came in off the ocean. But I mean, it's something to watch. Again, e-commerce has totally changed intermodal across the border. You're seeing massive amount of Amazon and other containers or trailers being repositioned, whereas before that was a lot of big stalwart carriers repositioning empties. So now that there's competition on that, the rails know that. So, you know, I think the dynamic has changed from 18 quite a bit. So it's hard to draw proxies to what we saw back then. But overall, I would pick if my job depended on getting freight from point A to point B, I would put it over the road versus on the rail 99 times out of 100.
Yeah. And that, you know, cause again, like I've working in this industry as long as I have, man, I found that when you're like, and this is why I love truckload being as like, I don't want to say unregulated, but there's not like a mega carrier that controls the market like you find in rail, like you find in, you know, more specialized things. Is there's like 5 to 10 providers that kind of have a stronghold over that market as a whole. And that's why it's like you see that. I'll just call it what it is. The no give a fuck attitude of what are you going to do? You're going to go to somebody else. Like no one's going to create another rail, you know, like these are your,
you don't want to go into business and create a railroad.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it, man. But I think like that's what you find. And I'm not saying that's every rail provider out there, but in my personal experience I know the 3 total truckloads that I've ever moved in my career is that's the experience that I have of, well, fuck you, deal with it. What are you going to do? Are you going to just come pull it off the rail? We're going to do whatever the fuck we're going to do, and you're going to deal with it. And that was the general sentiment that I felt with it. You know, my favorite one, Ken, and I don't really talk about, you know, some of this shit all the time, but my favorite one was I got billed because a intermodal provider decided to deliver the load early because it was sitting in their yard. And then they took and billed me for an early delivery fee. And I'm like, I never requested this. You took it upon yourself. They're like, yeah, well, we delivered it and you're paying for it. And I'm like, and then they had like direct withdrawal from my company at the time. So it was like, it was gone. And
it's not coming back either.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, man. But to Christy Nykel, she's great. She plays in the intermodal space a lot. And she says that Ari calls it out. So the rails truly see what is happening is they can be 6 months behind on adjusting pricing and everything else out there. And it's, yeah, man, I think to me, we're, you know, as always, it's like, as a service provider, no matter, you just got to find a fucking solution. Like there's a lot of noise that you can, like, I'm all about data. Don't get me wrong. Data tells a phenomenal story, but at the end of the day, you still have to execute because data can never provide you a solution for when a customer comes to with a hot last minute shipment that somebody else dropped the ball on, and you can be, you know, essentially their knight in shining armor with that. And again, it's like price is irrelevant at times.
Oh yeah. I mean, no doubt about it. And that's how you get your segue into getting on RFPs and all that other stuff.
No, that's exactly it. Again, you guys hit up joc.com. Another great article by Ari Ash. He's a phenomenal follow out there. JOC Intermodal Savings Index, truck rates poached freight from rail in Q2. And then I want to jump in to this last article. We're probably only going to get to 2 today, and that's just what happens when Ken comes on. I'm surprised we're even getting to 2, but this one is from Freightways about truck transportation job growth slows in July. Although that there's no pause in the truck transportation sector, which added jobs in July for the 26th time in the past 27 months. Totally seasonal adjusted employment for the sector rose by 3,500 jobs in July. But, you know, I think that's just, again, the headline aspect of it is that it slows, but it's actually up like there's more jobs that were added in July. I think that, you know, again, from a hiring perspective, I don't know any company in trucking that isn't hiring right now. Whether, you know, I know there's some companies out there that are always going to lay off people, and that is what it is. But I think literally every company out there, if you polled them, 98 out of 100 are going to be hiring people for this seasonal push that's coming up for the holidays, especially.
Yeah, I mean, we weren't allowed to travel during peak. I mean, the restrictions that are, I mean, directors and yeah, 100%. I mean, the question becomes like, we're seeing very low unemployment rates.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to disentangle from some of these numbers what is participation versus what is vacancies. So, I mean, it's a pretty lagging statistic. I don't know that I read too much into this, really. I mean,
yeah.
It's not like they're going to I think they are. I think you're 100% right. They hire a lot of temporary help. That all gets flushed out of the system in late January, early February. Of course, they keep some of those folks on, and it's not all temporary. But
yeah,
you know, I would expect there's no shortage of a desire for warehousing right now, right? And I know that was touched on in the article as well.
Yep.
I don't know that we're seeing like this isn't a harbinger of like hard times coming in warehousing. They literally can't build them fast enough.
Yep.
So again, I don't know that there's really much here other than kind of supporting the steady state hypothesis where the market's at.
Yeah.
I think if you were to draw it as a picture, right, the market probably came down faster than it typically did, but we'll probably spend more time where we're at to accommodate for it, right? If you just keep redrawing the line where we are now, as it kind of stretches out, that slope will be a lot narrower, right?
Yeah.
So the rates came down quite a bit, but they've held for so long, and they'll probably will continue to hold as we get into the fall. That if you kind of total that slope over that period of time, like Pythagoras, right? If we can all remember back, it's probably going to not appear as bad. It's that short and sharp that gets people sort of alarmed. But
I also think though, Ken, like if you're looking at it, when you're talking about a drastic drop and everything else, it's something like it was a drastic rise as well. So it's kind of hard to take that into, I don't know, from my perspective, it's just like with fuel prices, like, it shot up essentially 70 cents a gallon within a 60-day period. And now that it's dropped kind of 40 cents, they're trying to praise it out as like, oh, it's the greatest drop ever, or, like it's the largest drop ever. But it's like, you can't, like, you have to remove when there's a massive spike in anything and then a massive drop in anything. It's back to the normalization of things. It's going back to a normal freight market, because there's always going to be spikes and peaks and everything out there. But it's like, you can't sit there and like, I guess, overemphasize on some of these things when it's, unprecedented highs in certain sectors of the industry.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff isn't being written for practitioners, though, right? I mean, I think you and I would both agree about that. I mean, it's to grab your attention, and then, like, what are you supposed to do? I mean, it's like reading your local news feel-good story. It's like, okay, transportation jobs were mixed, the growth slowed. Okay, I got some freight to move.
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, I think a lot of this is important context. I'm not advocating for folks to be, head in the sand, but I think at the end of the day, if you read every other word of some of this stuff, it becomes a lot more impactful, right? Because you got to realize, like, the objective reason why these things are being created, these articles, is to get clicks and sell advertise. I mean, that's,
yeah, of course. I
don't paint that in a negative light. I mean, I think that's a great business to be in. But as a practitioner, I think it does you no good whether it's a bloodbath or you know what I mean, or whether we use these extreme terms or not.
Yeah. And that's exactly it, because it's like, again, and I talk about this, a lot about the whole, like, the sensationalism that certain things get out there. Like, I mean, I'm convinced, Ken, I could 100x my engagement if I played that narrative, but that's not what, to me, that does nothing. Like, that benefits me, Chris Jolly, as a singular person. That's not what my mission is with a lot of this stuff. Because again, like, a lot of this information that's out there, although relevant, does not help you fucking execute in your job.
Right.
It doesn't make freight move. It doesn't help you add customers. It doesn't help you deal with shitty situations that, like, the reality of this industry. It's literally fucking irrelevant. And, and that's the thing, is it's like, although there's information out there that is beneficial to help you, it doesn't make your driver show up. All right. It doesn't make you have a solid operations. It doesn't help you win more business.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's why people have connected with you, and why I see people connect with some of our analyst content. I mean, what really struck me during a lot of this kind of turmoil that went on in the spring is that brokerage especially is a high turnover, low tenure field.
Yeah.
There's a very small minority of people that have been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, for sure.
So there are people that graduated college and they've only experienced these astronomical highs. I mean, they don't have context of what it was like in 19 or 16. Certainly not dating. I don't have context of what it was like in freight back in 08, right? So yeah. I think rather than just sort of combat the narrative, it's helpful to kind of bring them along and say, look, this is untenable. I mean, these national averages, these lane rates and head haul lanes were not, I mean, shippers would never, like, they may build their own railroads if that was the long-term cost to move freight going forwards, right? That's a joke, but it's hard to contextualize when you have these macro cycles and sort of these micro participants.
Yeah,
that may come and go, and they get off stipend and they realize this isn't for them, so they go bounce to a different industry or a different job, all in the context of one up or down. And let's just be honest, very few people leave the market when it's on fire, going up, right? More people leave it when it goes down. So that's sort of my current operating thesis on how the headlines affect your average floor broker.
Yeah. Jesse Taylor, this is funny. When you're driving 80 for the whole road trip, 70 starts to feel slow. Fucking phenomenal analogy, Jesse Taylor. That's about it too. And no, I mean, you're right, man, because, to me, it does, like, you pull any industry out there, like with real estate and everything else. Now that the housing market's starting to cool, guess what? People are going to quit being realtors because it's not easy, and people gravitate around to when things are easy. But the real players, the people who are going to be in this industry for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, a lot of this information is it's a lot of noise at the end of the day. Like, although relevant, like, you need to know rates, you need to study data. I'm not discrediting any data that's out there, but data doesn't help you execute in your day-to-day fully. Like, it helps you prepare, it helps you set yourself up. But at the end of the day, you need to understand that every market is cyclical. And if you're in this for the long term, there's going to be good times, there's going to be bad times, but your customers, I can guarantee you, if you call your customer and say it's really hard to cover your shipment right now, I don't know what I'm going to do, they're going to fucking fire you on the spot. All right? It's that simple.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like having the right data too, right? And I'm not just saying that like competitively. I mean, within DAT, there's data you should be looking at as a broker, there's data you should be looking at as a shipper.
Yep.
And in a lot of cases, those might be exclusive, right? I might not care as much about contract rates if I'm a broker operating totally in the spot market.
Yep.
So I think it's just about learning what to look at, what to trust. And then when you do get some more slack, maybe that's when you do take on some professional development and maybe learn more about intermodal. Right? I've seen a lot of brokers that have been able to like expand their book of business during slower periods by learning a different mode. Yep. Or kind of expanding into LTL and building a little bit of a book. And then when the market gets tight again, boom, you have customers lined up that you can grow with. So I think it's just about being prudent about how you're operating within your role, within your company, within your industry.
No, I get it, man. I'm right there with you. Well, hey guys, that's it for today. As always, it flies by when Ken's on the show. I think me and him could go for a couple hours every time, but dude, how can we reach out more? I mean, you guys do your live show every single Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. And again, it's a lot of industry insight, which again, I follow every single Tuesday. I'm on that show. I'm in the audience listening to it. Cause again, there's so much relevant information, and hearing you and Dean go back and forth on this stuff. It's one of my favorite follows out there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We have our show. I mean, Dean's Report. Dean's always on Sirius XM on Road Dog. Yeah. You can kind of sort of tell how busy I am with business stuff by how much I post on LinkedIn. When I get a little bit of chance to kind of think and look at data, you might see a couple more graphs. I'd love to have the amount of time Jason Miller has to look at charts and data, and he's an academic. I mean, that's his job, right? So, yeah, just reach out to me on LinkedIn. Check out the show. There's nothing more. Most of my context and what I think about is framed by conversations I have within the industry at this point, right? So I really appreciate the engagement, and I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Ken will be back more, guys. Don't worry. That's it for today. I appreciate you guys all so much. That's it. Freight Coach Morning Show, live every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central. If you saw value in this, you guys share the show. All right. This is how this is going to continue to grow and evolve, is by you guys sharing it. I appreciate all the support that you guys show, and we'll be talking to you tomorrow. And that's it for today, guys. That's